If you're new here, buckle in. The crimes we cover aren't for the faint of heart. And if you think you can handle the truth behind cases authorities wish you'd forget, then hit that subscribe button before we begin. It started on a cold March morning, just outside the small town of Ridgewater, a quiet community surrounded by pine forests and long, empty roads that stretch out like veins across the hills. Nothing dramatic ever happened there. Not until the transport van rolled through. The footage that would later go viral was captured by a weathered security camera mounted above a rundown gas station. Grainy, gray-tinted, and flickering at the edges, the kind of footage investigators hate because it only tells part of the truth. But this time, it showed more than anyone expected. At exactly 6:42 a.m., the van carrying inmate Elias Cade pulled into the station's side lot. Cade wasn't notorious, but he wasn't insignificant either. A former construction worker turned burglar, he'd been arrested for a string of high-value thefts across 3 states. What made him dangerous wasn't violence, it was intelligence. Officers often said he had the patience of a hunter and the precision of a surgeon. He observed, waited, and struck when no one was paying attention. On that morning, the 2 transport officers, veteran Sergeant Monroe and rookie Deputy Harris, stepped out of the van to inspect what they thought was a minor mechanical issue. A rattling sound under the chassis. Nothing major. Just routine. But routine is where complacency hides. Inside the van, handcuffed, chained, and secured to a metal bench, Elias sat with his head bowed. He looked calm, almost resigned. The kind of demeanor that makes officers trust the restraints more than they should. The kind of demeanor that makes investigators suspicious, but only in hindsight. The gas station's security footage captured Monroe opening the hood while Harris circled to the rear. A few seconds of silence followed. And then the moment that changed everything. A sharp clatter, like metal snapping. Harris jerked backward. Monroe shouted something unintelligible. The rear door of the van swung open with startling force. And Elias Cade stepped out. He didn't run at first. He scanned the empty parking lot with a calmness that still unsettles people who've watched the footage. Then, without breaking eye contact with the camera, as if he knew it was there, he sprinted toward the tree line, chains dragging behind him. By the time Monroe and Harris regained control, Elias had vanished into the thick morning fog. Officers searched the woods, nearby roads, and abandoned buildings. Nothing. The escape took less than 12 seconds. But here's the part that shook investigators the most. When forensics tagged the van later that day, they discovered something that wasn't supposed to be there. Buried under the rear bench, taped behind a loose metal panel, was a small, black flash drive. No fingerprints. No dust. Recently planted. And on that flash drive? A single video file. Timestamped 3 days before the escape. It showed Elias speaking directly into a camera from what looked like a dimly lit basement. Calm. Controlled. Almost rehearsed. He said only one sentence. "Tell them I never should have been in that van." The officers stared at each other, confused. Investigators questioned how a prisoner in a secure facility managed to record anything, let alone hide a flash drive in a transport vehicle. And then they noticed something else. The background of the video, the concrete wall behind Elias, had a symbol carved into it. A clean, deliberate mark. One investigators recognized immediately. Because that symbol had shown up before, in a case they never solved. And when they pulled the old files from storage, the truth hit them like a punch to the chest. Elias Cade wasn't working alone. Someone wanted him out. And they were willing to risk everything to make it happen. The symbol carved into the concrete wasn't new to the investigators. It was the same one found at 3 burglary scenes over a 5-year span, a thin diamond shape intersected by 2 short horizontal lines. Detectives had always believed it represented a crew, a silent network of thieves who operated with military-level discipline and had a reputation for disappearing before police even arrived. But no one had ever proved the crew existed, and no arrest had ever been linked to its mark. Until now. Back at Ridgewater County Sheriff's Office, the investigation room buzzed with confusion. Officers crowded around the flash drive video, playing it again and again, searching for missed details. The dim basement. The blank stare. The deliberate sentence Elias spoke. It all hinted at planning, months of it. And that symbol in the background? That was the part no one could explain. Detective Laura Briggs, a sharp-eyed investigator from the State Bureau of Criminal Analysis, arrived on the scene within hours. She was known for her precision, her refusal to accept coincidence, and her ability to read criminals like open books. As she studied the footage frame by frame, she didn't look at Elias first, she looked at the shadows behind him. "Pause there," she ordered, pointing at a faint outline on the wall. "Zoom in." The technician complied, though the image deteriorated with each magnification. But the shape was still visible, a hook bolted into the wall, with a pair of broken zip ties hanging from it. "Someone restrained him during that recording," Briggs said quietly. "But they didn't restrain him well." The room fell silent. Meanwhile, search teams scoured the dense woods behind the gas station, tracking broken branches, bent grass, and shallow footprints. By noon, they located something unsettling: a pair of handcuffs lying in a shallow creek bed, cleanly cut through by what looked like industrial bolt cutters. The kind transport officers never carry. Whoever helped Elias escape didn't just plan ahead. They were waiting for him. Authorities widened the perimeter. Roadblocks went up. Drones scanned nearby farmland. But with each passing hour, it became clear that Elias was moving with purpose, not desperation. He was heading somewhere, and he had help. By evening, the sheriff's office received its first major break. A trucker passing down Route 19 reported seeing a man stumbling along the roadside around dawn, barefoot, soaked, and still wearing a torn prison uniform. The trucker offered help, but the man refused and disappeared into the woods. The problem? That was 20 miles from where Elias escaped. Too far for someone to cover on foot in that time frame. Unless he wasn't alone. Detective Briggs pushed maps across the table, marking sightings, camera angles, and timestamps. "He's being transported," she said. "Off-grid. No highways. No rest stops. Whoever's helping him knows how to travel unseen." Then she pointed at a location on the map, a cluster of abandoned industrial buildings near the river. A place previously used by smugglers in the early 2000s. A place investigators had raided once before. A place where the same symbol had been found etched into a rusted metal door. The task force mobilized immediately. Officers moved quietly under cover of night, surrounding the old warehouse with tactical precision. Every officer expected a firefight, or at least resistance. But when they breached the building, weapons drawn, they found nothing but empty hallways and dust-covered floors. At least until they reached the center of the warehouse, where a single folding chair sat under a hanging light bulb. On the chair was another flash drive. And a note. A short, simple message printed in clean block letters. "You're late." The tension snapped like a wire. Someone was taunting them. Someone was playing a game. Detective Briggs inserted the new flash drive into her laptop. Another video appeared, recorded from a different location, this time a moving vehicle. Elias was in the passenger seat, staring directly at the camera. He looked exhausted but unharmed. He spoke only one sentence, just like before. "Stop chasing me and start asking why." No one in the room moved. Because behind Elias, reflected in the side window, was the silhouette of another person, someone driving. Someone investigators instantly recognized. It was a former police officer who had vanished 2 years earlier. And the moment Briggs saw his face, she knew this case was no longer about an escape. It was about a conspiracy. One that reached far deeper than anyone imagined. The video ended, but the room stayed frozen. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. The silhouette behind Elias, the driver, was unmistakable. Former Officer Caleb Mercer. Once considered one of the sharpest tactical minds in the region, he disappeared during an internal corruption probe. Some believed he fled the country. Others believed he'd been silenced. But no one expected this. Detective Briggs felt the weight of the revelation settle into her chest like a stone. Mercer had not only resurfaced, he was helping a prisoner escape custody. And he wasn't running. He was making sure investigators saw him. The message was clear. This wasn't a rescue. This was a warning. Within the hour, federal agents were brought into the case. The command center transformed into a maze of screens, maps, timestamps, vehicle sightings, old case files resurfaced from archives sealed years ago. Everything pointed to one unsettling truth. Mercer had been connected to every scene marked with the diamond and lion symbol. He was the ghost behind the crew. And Elias Cade was the only person who knew why. As analysts scrubbed the newest video frame by frame, a detail emerged. A highway sign reflected faintly in the vehicle's side mirror. The numbers were too blurry to read, but Briggs recognized the landscape beyond it: dry grassland, scattered farm silos, and a faint blue water tower leaning slightly to the east. Mercer was heading toward Brayfield, a near-abandoned town 30 miles from the state border. Officers launched a multi-unit pursuit, but they moved carefully. Mercer wasn't just ex-law enforcement. He had spent years studying their patterns, their protocols, and their weaknesses. If they rushed, he'd vanish again. Brayfield was silent when they arrived. Rows of boarded-up homes sat like hollow shells. Streetlights flickered even in daylight. Wind scraped loose metal siding against old buildings, creating a low wail that carried across the town. The officers split into teams. Briggs led the group that entered the old community center, a crumbling structure previously used during the early investigations into Mercer's activities. She pushed open the door cautiously, scanning the dark hallway with a flashlight. Dust danced in the beam like falling ash. Rooms were empty. Offices abandoned. Papers scattered across the floor by years of drafts. But at the far end of the hall, a single door stood slightly ajar. Briggs motioned for her team to hold. She pushed it open slowly. Inside was Elias Cade, sitting on a metal stool, unarmed and alone. His wrists were free, no longer bearing the marks of restraints. He stared at the floor, silent, as if waiting. Briggs stepped forward. "Where's Mercer?" Elias raised his head. His eyes were tired but sharp, sharper than before. "You're not listening," he said. "None of this is about me." Briggs pressed him further. She demanded answers, demanded clarity, demanded the missing piece. Elias inhaled deeply, as if preparing to reveal something he'd held back for years. Then he nodded toward the window. "You need to see something." Briggs approached the window cautiously. What she saw made her blood run cold. Across the street, perched on the roof of an abandoned hardware store, was a small drone. It hovered silently, its lens pointed directly at the community center. And tied to its underside was a note fluttering violently in the wind. Officers retrieved it within moments. The message was short. "Cade is a witness, not the target. The real story isn't his escape. It's who wanted him silenced before he talked." Before Briggs could turn back to Elias, a deafening crack echoed through the building, a single gunshot from outside. Officers scrambled. The drone dropped from the sky like a stone. And Mercer was gone. Vanished again. Elias stood up, resigned. "Now you know," he said quietly. "Whoever's pulling the strings, they're not finished." Briggs stared at him, realizing this wasn't the end of a case. It was the beginning of something far bigger, a hidden network, a buried truth, and a conspiracy that stretched far beyond Elias Cade and Caleb Mercer. The chapter closed not with an arrest, but with an unanswered question. One that still haunts investigators today. If this story shook you, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.